Senator Cassidy.
Thank you. Thank you all for what you do. Ms. Magermains, I really like your PDMP, and I'm asking questions not to diminish, but to understand. It seems like you are a model for what everybody should be doing. But when I look at the number of opioid deaths in HIV from your Wisconsin DPH, you've actually increased since implementation. And I say that not to accuse, but to understand. Why, with such an incredibly effective program since 13, have opioid deaths risen from 350 to 400, that sort of thing?
Thank you, Senator. I think we can see that there is a reduction in the opioids that are being prescribed and dispensed. However, there is the increase in overdose deaths, and I think it's because of the presence of the fentanyl and the fact that there are heroin overdose deaths with. Now,
let me ask, because I'm looking at these stats, and I can share this, but it's from your government.
Sure.
And the prescription opioids are also upsloping. It's the heroin, but also prescription opioids. So, any thoughts about that?
I think it's a slow process. I think that the prescribing has effects later on down the road. So reduced prescribing. There are people who are already addicted and who may end up overdosing. And I think that it's really just moving in a new direction once you do start curbing some of the prescribing. So I think the effects
a
might
lag
be
time
later.
Before effect.
Exactly.
What do you do with your data? Do you proactively refer, you implied you did, but to confirm, do you proactively refer a physician who's an outlier, tremendous, 3 standard deviations out? Do you proactively refer she or he to law enforcement?
To law enforcement, no. The Controlled Substances Board oversees the program in Wisconsin, and the Controlled Substances Board has the authority to refer to licensing board, or the licensing board, so a physician to the medical board, advanced practice nurse prescriber to the nursing board, et cetera. So
there is a pattern of physicians that are pill mill doctors. They move from state to state to state to state. I say that as a physician, and as Dr. Paul said, regretfully so. Is there any way to track a risk factor for a doc being a pill mill doc, and I see Secretary Tilley nodding his head, so I'd love to have your input as well. My gosh, licensing board, he's lost his license in 3 other states. It seemed like there should be a trigger for someone to monitor. By the way, I'll tell you, I once had a drug rep come up and she said, I know who the pill mills are because I can go to their office and there's a certain clientele. Somebody pays $300 for an initial visit and they walk out with a handful of prescriptions 5 minutes after entering the exam room. So I'm thinking a drug rep can figure this out, not to diminish her, but she's just observing, and everybody with their databases aren't coming to the same conclusions. So hats off to her, but it's a little bit kind of indicting us. Any thoughts on that?
So speaking of the Wisconsin PDMP, the data is about the prescriptions that are dispensed in Wisconsin. So a prescriber that first practiced outside of Wisconsin would not have PDMP data that is analyzed with the Wisconsin PDMP data. However, things like the average distance that patients travel to see a prescriber.
I don't mean to cut you off. I just got a minute, 38 seconds.
Yep.
Secretary Tilley, you were also nodding your head when I spoke about these pill mill docs. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, a number, but in a minute I would tell you very briefly that we are tracking that data. A company, APRIS, is helping a number of states do that as well, red flagging, letting doctors know where they stand as well so they can look and see what if they're awfully getting busy, not understanding how many they may be prescribing, seeing some of those red flags themselves to be able to self-assess.
So if
that's
a doc
another
had
thing.
gone from Indiana to Ohio to Tennessee to your state, and somehow there's been flags along the way that the doc is a pill mill doc, would you know that?
We would, and there's only one state we can't collaborate with now, and with 7 border states of Kentucky, and Missouri is the only one we're trying to get there. And certainly we want, not to be critical, but just reality. But we do know that.
Okay, that's
we
great.
can track that.
And does that affect your licensing of that physician to obtain a medical license and/or the surveillance of his practice once you've so identified?
One of the challenges has been the Board of Medical Licensure in our state. They have come a great ways in that area, but I still think they need to be more aggressive in making certain that docs who are overprescribing, number one, know it, have a chance to correct it, and if they don't, are sanctioned for it.
Next, Ms. Boss, I got a few seconds left. You mentioned in your testimony giving MAT to people in prison. Did you mean jail, i.e. short-term imprisonment, or did you mean prison, i.e. they could be there for 10 years?
I meant both.
So if they're in prison and there for 10 years, you must have a problem with contraband, huh?
So the program's been in effect for about a year, and we have not, as far as I understand, not seen an increase in contraband. Now, please know that we don't provide MAT for an individual who has a sentence of 10 years until prior to release. So if someone has a history of opioid dependence and they're leaving and they are at risk for overdose and are appropriate for medication and want to get on medication, we are willing to provide that medication prior to release, but not for a 10-year sentence.
Thank you. I'll finish by thanking you, Dr. Abubakar, for your powerful testimony. You're back.